All right. Hello.
Hi there, Dr. Jean Clarkin. How are
Hello
you this
there,
morning?
Rebecca. I'm very well. Welcome, everyone. Are we live? We're
We
recording,
are.
so we must be live.
Yep, we are live, and we're also being live streamed. Let me just say that right at the start. You can go to Proactive Health Collective with Keen on Facebook, and we right now are live streaming. So I'll eventually check back into there and see if you're leaving comments or questions or anything. And I'll also like to say to those who are attending here on Zoom, to make sure that you know to leave any comments in the chat. If you would like to be promoted to a panelist, for example, I see somebody illustrious up there named right now, and you'd like to be a panelist, we'd love to have you on. So just let us know that you want to do that, put that in the chat, and we will promote you accordingly. And I see one there. Allowed to talk, and you could also video if you want, Joe. So, yeah. I think I did that right. Joe, can you talk and see if we can hear you?
Okay, can you hear me? Hey,
Yeah. So this is Joe May of Hyperbaric Fitness out in Swansea, and Joe's been a guest with us before, and a lot of you know him. So, Joe, if you want to be video, you can do that too, but you don't have to.
okay, well, I can. Let me
You
see
can?
how to do that.
Bottom left of the screen there.
Okay,
I-
more.
I'm promoting you to a panelist. Oh, you lucky person, you.
Okay,
The pay, it could be a little better, but the benefits are amazing.
Yeah. You have been promoted.
okay, wow. I am privileged.
More responsibility, not much more pay.
Hey, can you see me? Am I on the video now?
I don't
You're
see you
not.
on video, so you're gonna probably have to do that on your end.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
bottom left
weird.
of the screen. You don't.
Yeah.
No.
There you
Okay.
go.
How's that? All right.
Awesome.
Okay, good.
Joe, by the way, I'm sorry I got your message, and we're trying to coordinate. Come see you. So
Oh, sure. Yeah, no problem.
yeah, it's not my strong suit, coordination.
I
Well,
wouldn't say
you're an
that.
awesome musician and singer. I love your songs.
And there's a lot of coordination there. And if you're running a business, there's a lot of coordination there. There's a lot. But you have young boys, and Castine is working at home, and you guys have a lot going on. So sometimes coordinating all of that can be a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, one of my things is when I was single, I was always like, yep, I could do this, I could make plans. And then when I got married, and I was like, all right, we got to figure out whose family is doing what. And it became, like, all right, too much. And then, if it's like everybody in the business, like we're still trying to get our holiday party from last year together this year for the office. That's how challenging I am in that
This,
department.
I was thinking I would love to do like, because our staff has expanded, I would love to do like a Yankee swap. And then I'm like, but when would we do that?
Yeah.
I can't figure out
Exactly.
when we will do that. So, yeah.
So welcome, everyone. We should probably introduce the topic and all that.
And ourselves. 'cause we
And
might
actually
have
get
to
started
walk- Yeah. Good idea, Dr. Jean. And now here we have, oh my goodness, it's Dr. Matt and a River.
Is
Here
that
we
River's
are.
head that I
Good
see down
morning.
there?
I see Rivers. Oh, River.
Guess we have two guests. Hello, Joe.
Hey there.
Special
Hi,
guest.
Joe.
Hey.
Yeah, I love what you do.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Hey, you got to come down for a free dive. You and your staff.
Oh, you bet. Would love that. We're
Yeah,
big fans of that work. Yeah.
it's all integrative. That's what we do here. So we are the Proactive Health Coach team. I have right here with me, Dr. Jean Clarkin of Monadnock Natural Health. Dr. Jean is a chiropractor. He's also practices, oh gosh, I never know what to say about that, but it's the kinesiology part.
I just call it functional nutrition.
Yeah. So he's got some really cool ways to find out what's going on with you. And they're objective kinds of things. And he's got the tools to do that. He also practices network spinal analysis, which also Dr. Matt and Tisha Abitali do. Tisha Abitali practice that as well here at Cheshire Wellness Center right here in downtown Keene at the Miller Forge building. Dr. Jean is just like a block away. I don't know how I don't know if it was like just this like law of attraction or something that brought us all into this little block, but we are here. And then we
It
have.
was Matt, actually.
Okay.
Hey, can I just give a shout out for Cheshire Wellness? So a client of mine who's been seeing me and I've been helping her just started seeing Cheshire Wellness, and she is so excited, and they have done so good by her and discovering, some of her motion issues and the underlying cause. And she didn't give me permission to talk about her, so I'm not. But anyway, I'm just really thrilled about Cheshire Wellness and what they do.
Yeah, we've got
Glad to hear that. Thank you, Joe.
A great integrative group here. And I just want to introduce you, Joe. Joe Mabe is of Hyperbaric Fitness in Swansea. People, you are exploding. People are doing so well.
I wouldn't use the word exploding. Probably not the right
Yeah, I was going
word.
to say what, I don't know.
Nobody's exploding, right? But what you're doing and the word getting out there is exploding, because you add this other part of the whole thing that deals with issues in a different way. And so it's good. That's what we do here. We also have regular panelist here would be Allison Millar, who is a licensed acupuncturist. She's amazing. Basic Balance right here in Keene on Winter Street. Allison, she won't mind me saying this because she said she might even come in and talk about it, but she's right now, she has COVID. And she might pop on and tell us what her experience is being like with that. So in any case, we thought today a good topic would be, we're coming up on Thanksgiving, talking about gratitude and talking about how we live our lives. What is the spirit with which you live your life? What is your outlook? What are your focuses? And how do they interact and influence our health? Does that sound right, guys?
That sounds good. I would say, just like on the backdrop of thinking of it, again, we're Proactive Health Collective of Keene here, and so we're coming from the lens of health and wellness, and the idea that, sometimes we focus on our biochemistry, on our structures and all that stuff, and all that is very important. There's obviously another aspect, which is our mental emotional state, our spirituality, and I think that's kind of what we're going to get into. And I would submit to say that it could be as important or even more important than those other pieces of the puzzle, potentially. I don't know. I'm going to throw that out there at the panel here and see what you think.
Well, I would say that's true. I mean, if you are just taking all the right nutrients and things, and you have a grumbly, Mr. Scrooge kind of approach to life. So kind of a Mr. Scrooge approach to life is based on fear. It's based on feeling that no one is taking care of me, and I have to do all of this myself, and I have to, hold everything in and control it. Then you are really already taking down by notches anything else that you're doing. If you have that attitude of want instead of abundance, if you have an attitude of I have to hoard rather than be generous, I think that is huge when it comes to your health.
So I personally went very dark about 5 years ago in my soul when I saw and I understood what was really happening medically, nationally, and politically. It's a very dark world out there, right? And my friends who called me the crazy conspiracist, 10 years ago, now call me the guy that was right, But what ended up happening was I spent too much time on the dark side. So my salvation was doing a lot of prayer and waking up every morning saying thank you for my amazing life. And then I have to literally every day give myself a little pep talk, thanking God for, true science and exploration and discovery. And I take the time now to be grateful and speak words of gratitude for little things. And I'm telling you, it's why I haven't put a gun to my head. And I have been tempted in my life. Most people have at some point. And when you're trying to hold back and stem the darkness, and it seems like a battle where we're facing insurmountable odds, which honestly every one of us on this panel are. When we are the line in the sand for parts of humanity that we touch, it can get very discouraging. And I'm telling you, the way I do it is I wake up and I say, in simple things, thank you, God, for this beautiful woman I'm laying next to. Thank you for the opportunity. And so to go forward in gratitude and then express that gratitude towards God and man, it's really what keeps me going. Otherwise, I couldn't do it. So when I heard about this topic, I just thought, wow, how important is this topic? What a game changer. How we need to talk about this to everybody, people of faith, no faith, people of whoever is our neighbor, doesn't matter. We need to be expressing this to people. This is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of my mentors, one of Dr. Abatelli's mentors as well, Dr. Epstein, he used to say, you can't eat yourself and exercise yourself well. You first have to have a spark of wellness to then be able to do those things for yourself. Like it has to come from wellness to translate to those actions that are positive for yourself. If there's no wellness, if there's all darkness, which is the opposite, right? Then those things aren't even possible for you.
Yeah.
So definitely a big piece of the puzzle. I think, a lot of people probably, and I know I've experienced this in my life where, whether it's abundance or health or different things where when you feel in that place where you don't have a lot or that darkness, as you were describing, Joe, is there is sort of pressing you in different ways. It's easier to be woe is me and to be from, like what you were talking about, Becky, that place of need and the opposite of gratitude, right? But the trick to the whole thing is that being grateful for what you have always brings you to the next level, right? It brings you to the next level up. And it's hard. That's the challenge, I think, with a lot of us is a lot of people out there. It's like when you're experiencing so much of this challenge, it's hard to be grateful for that. But I think one of life's lessons is you can be grateful, even for the challenges, that you get the gifts out of them.
Yeah.
Just like you were saying, Becky, like with this whole thing with COVID and whatever, one of the things like Castine and I, we consciously we're talking about this, like we want to really create more community. We know people around and the kids have friends and stuff, but we don't feel like we really are solid and connected in community. And one thing that I've gained over the last year and a half, 2 years is like major solid community. And that's the gift, that's the gratitude. And even in in business, we actually expanded our business over this time period. So there's always challenges, but if you can learn to trust a little bit and then look for the good and the great and be grateful in what you have, it's, my experience anyways, you tend to move up the next level. It's almost like you're playing this game of life and that's part of the game. And as you learn that lesson, you get to move up to the next lesson.
I totally agree. I think, it's like exercise. Okay. You have to have some stress in order to build strength. And I think, the things in my life, and I'm really grateful because I was saying to God this morning, I'm like, compared to people, the things they've been through and what they've had to endure. And I'm reading right now the President and the Freedom Fighter by Brian Kilmeade about Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln. And just when you look back on biography and people, I've really been spared a lot. I'm kind of like the little princess child, but it has been the adversity in my life that has shaped my character more than anything else. And I think that's super important to get, that we're not looking for the life that has no challenges, the life that is easy. We're looking for a life that is on our path, that we can bring the things that we're especially gifted for and prepared for to meet with other people and to expand that. And it's all about community. And we see that in our practices all the time, all of us, but we also see it as we come together as colleagues. I mean, if nobody else was listening in on this today, and it was just us meeting, and we had an excuse to carve this hour out to talk to each other, well worth it for me, because that's another huge part of what this does for me. It connects me with my colleagues, and we all have our own different kind of expertise. You know, do what you do best and outsource the rest. This is not my thing. Go there, do this, do that. But I love it, and I love knowing all of you. I mean, it's a great richness.
That's a really important thing to talk about, Becky, is the circle that we share. You know,
Yeah.
a social biologist would talk about something called the circle of you. And one of the indicators, great indicators of just how healthy you really are, is how big is your circle. You know, and we can take a look, you know, globally over the last 2 years and say, well, the circle of you's gotten really small. That's an indicator of a decrease in health, right? And we can take a look directly right now and say, how big is the circle of you today? You know, and that's something that you can directly relate back to how you're doing. And I love something you said, Dr. Jean, about how, you know, it's sort of like, and I'll just paraphrase, but like the gratitude and the Thanksgiving take you to that next level, you know, right? Next level. We're so excited. And I think that has a lot to do with your energy state, because when you have a high energy state, you're naturally going to have good thoughts. It's going to be easy to do things. If you have a, you know, poor energy state, you're going to have negative thoughts, and we're going to go to those dark places. So what are the things that are going to ultimately lift the energy state? You know, and we all know what those are. We have different routines for doing that, but Thanksgiving is one way to do that.
Yeah.
Get it all in, and then hit the mute button there, Matt. I like your technique. Very good.
I don't hit the mute button. I love that sound. That's just a natural sound of life, you know, and that's what life sounds like. And
Yeah,
if
there's
we
something
were-
about,
yeah,
there's
and
something
he
about-
gets to be, and he gets away with it, right? You know, if I just started going, yeah, I might feel like I want to, but it doesn't go, it doesn't fly.
You know,
So- I'm also the senior pastor of Hope Chapel in Keene, and I have a rule, and that is when a baby is crying, I don't want them to take him out of the room.
Right.
Or when the baby's laughing and making noise. I want that as part of our community gathering. And
Yeah, we used to
you
say
know,
it's a sign the creator is present.
absolutely. It's life, it's health, it's joy, it's everything, right? So, yeah, that's good. Interesting, Gene, you just mentioned, or I'm sorry, Matt, you just mentioned the whole circle of you. And so I've noticed that people who come into hyperbaric fitness, the ones that are single and they've been ill for a while, they have no clan, no tribe, no gathering, no group, no support. And so when they walk into my business, I'm a little challenged sometimes because I naturally try to tell people, I direct them into their own natural set of relationships for help. But because, you know, my company, it's not just hyperbaric fitness. We set up support groups. We do, you know, we naturally developing organic groups, you know, people who have cancer get together for coffee, people who have diabetes, people who, you know, kind attracts the kind. And the saddest part is how many people come in and they have no clan, no tribe. They have nobody, they can't stretch their arms out and touch more than 4 people, you know, of who they actually know. And that's going to be our greatest strength going forward, is to have the right clan and tribe around you. Everyone needs a tribe. We got to stop being nationalists. We got to be tribal and clannish and family and best friends. And, you know, and gratitude can start when you're surrounded by a tribe that are grateful people. That's when you really start winning.
Yeah. And I would like to piggyback on that and just say, I don't want to just keep going down the dark path of the COVID whole thing, but that's one of the biggest things that has come out of this that's so negative, is dividing people's tribes, because families are divided. People are divided, students in their classrooms from their teachers, with not being able to see each other's faces and things. And I think, you know, we need to really focus in on how important these relationships are, how important it is to see somebody's face, how important it is to be able to be around people and gather together, whether it's family or whatever. And this is one of my biggest heart I think, cries about this whole thing is that I see this all the time. I have clients every day and I can't see my grandchildren. I haven't seen my grandchildren in 12 months. I haven't seen this. I can't do this. And these are things that are really cutting to the core of that tribal thing. That part of society that puts us together with us, our nearest and dearest, and then it moves out from there, right? But you've got that, and then it moves out. But right now, at this core level, we've got immediate families with problems with all of this. And so we really need to make sure that we're conscious as practitioners of what's going on with people when it comes to how this is impacting their personal relationships. Thankfully, Dale and I, we have one daughter, Krista. She is totally in agreement with us about this stuff. And that's great, but that's pretty rare. Yeah.
And there, so it's an exaggeration, right? So what stress does is that it squeezes you, and whatever's on the inside is going to come out, So this is a super, high stress situation, and divisive, but so too are, most things. If we get into that, one of the brilliant pieces of the work that we do, and perhaps at the core of it, the most brilliant, is that we always focus on what's right with someone's system, and we grow that. Imagine for a moment if you took that same model, which is we call a reorganizational model, versus a restorative model, which is what our predominant culture looks at, which is that everything's a series of problems to be fixed. Like, that's the reason why this is happening. That's the problem. That's the divisiveness. We have to fix that. Good luck with that, by the way. Versus looking at, say, the crisis, the adversity, whatever it is that's sort of like creating some sort of dissonance or drift, as more of an adversary, rather than an adversary, but like as like a challenge, and then something that we can actually look to grow into. And the only way you're going to be able to grow into that is by focusing on what does work. So when someone has resource somewhere, when things are working, we can come together around that rather than focusing on what divides us. It's a very different scene. Imagine for a moment if politics is an easy one to poke at. Imagine if we were to just if in our political sector, we were to start focusing on what worked rather than, what doesn't work and what divides us. That wouldn't be very good for political business, but it would start to actually create some change. Imagine that in education. Imagine that in traditional Western healthcare. Holy cow.
Yeah. Don't you think when you come to work, all you guys and me, we're busy. We have a lot of challenges, but doesn't it just feel great that you're making a difference, that you are, that you see it in the people you're working with? And it's a very positive thing, no matter what. And I think, again, what you're talking about, Dr. Matt, is like focusing on the positive. What's good? Let's accentuate the good. And as you accentuate the good and you feed that and you support that, well, then naturally it's more of a, offensive, defensive, but you are now taking away the bad, but you're doing it in a positive way. And I think, what you were saying, Matt, is it's not so much about attacking what's bad. It's like accentuating the good, but then what's the balance going to be? If you accentuate the good, then right, the bad's going to come down.
I always like to bring in,
I
always like to bring in the analogy of health, because again, just like you were saying, Matt, with our Western culture in this, we're always looking at disease as the problem, right? Versus disease as the solution. One of my, I always say this, one of the most amazing classes I didn't want to take, but was amazed at, was pathology, because I was like, I don't care about pathology. I want to talk about health, but pathology is actually about health. It's about how the body adapts and the things it does. Everything it's doing is a positive change. But I'm sure we all see this, right? People come in, they have symptoms. If there's ultimately not some kind of a fundamental change, the symptoms are going to return, or the symptoms are going to come back worse. So there has to be, in all of these things that happen, there's an opportunity. And I think, looking at the landscape of what's going on, COVIDly and all that kind of stuff, the symptom is really bad right now. The symptoms are bad, right? The societal symptoms, but the potential gold mine of this whole situation is something that's unprecedented in the amount of awakening and change that can come from this. Sometimes it takes a serious health event to wake us up. Like, I have a little heartburn, no problem. My digestive system's off a little bit, no problem. But when it starts getting serious, like, oh, okay, I'm awake now. Now I'm ready to change my life. And through that change, not only would you maybe avert the, health problem, death or whatever, but you might actually improve your life and your relationships and other things at the same time. So there's always tremendous opportunity, I think. And so it's how we frame it. And just another plug for Cheshire Wellness and what they do there. When somebody comes to my office, we're getting down to the nitty gritty of here's what's going on. We've taken inventory. Here's the things that need to change. We kind of give people a blueprint. But the people that come in that have changed their level of wellness, who have already brought their level of wellness up and their attitude is different, they're not fighting against their symptoms. They're not a victim anymore to their circumstance. They're saying, I want to be empowered. I know there's things that I can do for myself. Can you help me figure that out? Yeah, absolutely. And those people excel in their health. Whereas the people like, I've tried everything else. No one can fix me. Can you fix me? And they have that kind of, I'm not taking responsibility for myself attitude. They struggle. And so there's that piece of it. And I think that goes back to the original gratitude versus fear, or I don't know what the opposite of that would be, but where you're creating, there's like a vibrational thing. I was actually doing some try to change with people this past weekend, Matt. And that's what we were talking about. Like when you're congruent, right? It brings your energy level up, and then it makes change easy. If you're incongruent with yourself, then your energy level is subdued, and it makes change much harder. And then people tend to not be able to do it. But I think there's something about the attitude of gratitude that changes everything. It changes your if you're in a relationship with somebody and you're like, I don't like the way you smell in the morning, and I don't like the way you leave the, toilet paper roll, and I don't like this, and I don't like that. Like, your relationship is not going to be great. But if you could be like, wow, I'm so grateful, every day for what you bring to this and how you enhance my life, it's going to enhance your relationship. And the same thing with your health, same thing with your job. Wherever you turn, it's the same principle, right?
And I'd like to take that and actually frame that as a form of radical leadership. I'd like to just frame that looking at gratitude, looking at the positive, looking at what works, okay, versus what am I trying to get rid of in my life? I love the relationship example. It's like, let's face it, like, you've all got that list, right? Like, you've all got that list of, like, if they just change this one thing, or like these 3 things, everything would be perfect. They'd be perfect. My life would be perfect. Everything would be great. Like, everyone secretly, even if it's just like subconscious, or like maybe it's actually on the nightstand, but like, you've got that list. And versus, what if you were to find something that you appreciate about that person that you love, and something real, that you really appreciate about them, and you committed to telling them every day, and that every day you committed to it being something different? Would that add a little or a lot of value to that relationship?
Sure.
A lot, right? Yeah, it is a radical form of leadership in your life to be able to focus that way. It flies in the face of society, which is concerned about trying to fix everything, and this is wrong, and that's the reason why, which, by the way, is the consciousness developmentally of 2 to 5 years old. Just saying. It kind of like lives all the way down here, right next to the reptilian brain. Does not take a lot of energy to trash talk, right? It takes a lot more energy to actually come up with what's working, what's positive about this. That actually requires access to the frontal lobe, which we call the angel lobes. It takes a ton of energy to run this thing. And when people are mechanically distorted, when they're inside, when they're isolated, like Joe, you were saying, the people that are kind of more islands, them being the real challenged ones, like, absolutely. See, we've lost Joe for a second. He'll be back. There's all of that just kind of like boiling over. It becomes our responsibility to kind of pick it up. Like, how do you wake up in the morning? Is the first thing that happens when you wake up in the morning, like, sort of like, oh, the alarm, and like, oh, the dog, or like the kids, or, like, or do you wake up in a state of gratitude? That's a key indicator in terms of your level of health. That's a key indicator, how you wake up and what first runs through your physiology and your being in the morning. So pay attention to that stuff.
Yeah. So now here's another thing I've talked about before, and I'm not doing this because I think I look really cute as a child, but that's me.
I love that photo.
So I keep that right here so I can see it. I think this is the key thing too about living with other people and being involved with other people's lives is you can never get rid of the true person and don't ever interpret that person to you. So always remember that people had their roots a long time before you entered their lives. And they are that person. That person's essential core. And always try to embrace that and see the person outside his or her relationship with you. You know, I think that that's really important. It's not like Dale is my husband. He is my husband. I'm really glad he's my husband, but he didn't start out being my husband, and that's not his definition in life. And there are things that I could only, if I stop looking at him in the big grand scheme, I could just look at him as my husband. And that's really limiting. It's not right. I mean, the richness of people, you have to go beyond. And even if that might kind of threaten, you might think it might threaten your relationship or whatever, just let it go. Because that's who that person is. And I think that that's really important, is just embracing people, who they are, understanding they are not defined by their relationship to you. And I think that that's—
I love that, Becky. And that keeps you free to really just take responsibility for you. Like,
Yeah.
what if you started taking responsibility for everything in your life? That would be crazy. Could you imagine taking responsibility for every relationship, every situation, everything that we look outside of ourselves and say, that thing, like, okay, well, what part do I have to play in? And then, is it something that I can do something immediately about? Like, can I take an action right here, right now, that's going to move toward that? Because if I can, then it's worth sort of worrying about, talking about. If I can't, like, you got to set that aside. Like, that's ultimately just going to depreciate your energy. It's going to give you lower thoughts. It's going to connect you to something less than yourself. Ultimately, now you're playing smaller. And by the way, like, we need you to play bigger. We need all of you to play bigger right now, right? There are other people that really need you. We have the beautiful opportunity to serve, all of us. We get to see people and them on their journey. But the truth is that we all need some sort of purpose beyond ourselves. It's like a core need of being human, and part of like our divine blueprint to be here, to like be giving that. And we need you all to be doing that. Another form of radical leadership.
Yeah. So I was not going to bring this up because it sounds like, I'm patting myself on the back, and, the scripture says, don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. But because we're talking about this today, yesterday I had in here 2 little boys I love. I've been working with them for years, but the older boy has autism spectrum thing, and he was totally clearly vaccine injured. But he's been in here when I have my keyboard in here. He'd play it. I'm like, this guy has musical talent. And then I had my 6th string in here, and he's played it before. And believe me, I have a beautiful guitar at home. It's 12 string. I love it. But I had this 6th string that I've had since 2004, and I just gave it to him yesterday because this was the cool thing. He came in and he sits down and plays this thing. He's had no training. He knows how to position his fingers to get the sound he wants. He's got the rhythm. He knows how to play the mid strings instead of the up. Nobody's taught him this. I am like, that guitar is collecting dust because I don't play it when I'm here. I don't have time to play it. I never play it. So I was just like, I'm not patting myself on the back, but I am like, I have watched those boys go out,
Do you want to hear something, Becky? When I was in college, I started picking up my roommate's guitar and playing it a little bit, and then we graduated, and then after that, I'd gone to see him at his house, and his guitar was sitting there against the wall. And I said to him, this thing's just collecting dust. You might as well just give it to me. And he said, okay, here you go. And so that was the beginning of, that contribution that he made has now trickled out many years here to the future, 30
And
years.
can you imagine, it's just that I think is how those of us in the way we work, we're spiritual involved with it. It's not, I didn't send him out with an extra vitamin, right? Here you need another tincture. No, it was like, this was so fantastic. And it was just there. And, it makes me think that's what the way we're talking about today. Live with gratitude and generosity, and just don't hoard things, just do. And in life, those moments come and you just know when they're there and you do them, just do them, right? We all know that. Yeah.
You were talking earlier about that, right? Like, are we binding and like hoarding energy? So like bound energy, which by the way, shows up as pathology in the body because the body's actually downsizing itself. Okay. Different than being free energy. So it's like you have your body, your health becomes a free energy economy where you're able to give from your abundance.
Yeah.
Right? Because you have a plate to serve from, different than, oh, I need to hold all this for me and I'm into survival. Like, where's my, what was the funny thing? Toilet paper. Where's my toilet paper? Or, like insert like whatever, thing that doesn't really matter here, Mad Libs. But like that, just like hoard it and like keep it for yourself. Different than being like, there's always an abundance. Like, I have creation at my back door. Like we have everything we need. We may have lost some of the sort of generational knowledge of how to use it, but the truth is like everything's been provided. So.
Yeah. And I think it's wonderful. And I think when you have that trust, my feeling of that, it comes from my relationship with God. And I've always been outspoken about that on this presentation, but I will just say, I know that God provides for me. And as I trust him, he does that. But he also likes to keep it out there. It's not like, oh my goodness, this is like you have like $1 million in your bank account, because that's really not trust in God. That's just trust in, what I've managed to do and accumulate. And so I think, I like the bumpy ride. I'm good with the bumpy ride.
This is all that we're talking about here, this gratitude. I guess you could just say this would fit into the law of attraction. Does that coincide with your Christian? Is there biblical stuff that supports that you want to share?
And everything give thanks.
Everything give thanks.
And everything give thanks. And let's not be murmuring and grumbling, but in everything give thanks. And there's so many things to give thanks for. I mean, if you actually start to tick them off, you'll almost be embarrassed that you haven't been grateful for certain things because you didn't even realize it. And then you do it and you're like, wow, I feel so bad because I haven't even been grateful for this. If you start getting that gratitude list going, it will just never stop.
Yeah, and that's a really good thing to bring up, actually, and especially, like Joe, you're sharing some of your story, from, a time in your life where it was, things were lower, and, which imagines, like it's all personal, probably the understatement. And when we get in those moments, it's really important to, one of the most powerful things we can do is focus on what we're grateful for. Like if you find yourself, starting to tank, like write down 3 things that you're grateful for. Just right away, like, just like, that's like pulling the emergency brake, right? And then turn it around, like, okay, like here I am, like, what would make today amazing? What's one thing that I could do today that would make today a great day? I'm grateful for these things. I'm going to actually like put an action to it, do something that's going to make today a great day, and like start to take control of the situation for yourself, because we need you to be CEO of your own health. Like there's no one else going to do it for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And I think, I just noticed like, I'm like so grateful. I really should be dead right now. I have the genetics of my mother who had Alzheimer's very early. And God gave me wisdom to understand how to deal with that. And I'm able to help other people with those things. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like I could wake up and go, oh my goodness, I haven't called that person back. I feel like I'm so behind on certain areas. Like, oh my goodness, I have the ability to do what I'm doing. And I love it. I absolutely love it. And what I really love most is, meeting the people, getting to know people and having that connection. And I think when it comes in comparison to what we would say is mainstream medicine, and again, please don't think I don't know there's a role for that. There truly is. You do not want me operating on your brain. But all I can say is I think in the ways that we practice healthcare, as we practice, all of us here represented here and Allison as well, this is about the person. It's always about the person. And it's not about a lab report. It's not about just treating a cholesterol number or whatever. This is about,
Joe, is that you? Can you mute?
this is about, I think he might
Joe,
be.
can you mute?
But we work and
Joe, can you?
When I get to close my door and get to know somebody and talk to them,
I redid it. This is through Vistaprint, so if we do 1,000, it's this price, which is a lot better. That was like
Hey,
the
Becky,
price
why
I
don't you
paid
mute
for
everybody and
100,
start over?
but I could also do more, so we can get down to eventually 9.
I just
There we
muted.
go.
Cool, thanks.
I have control. So I think that what I want to say is what stands out with us is we look at the whole person, but not only do we look at the whole person for health, we make friends. I mean, you're like, oh my goodness, I never knew you. And you are so amazing. And this is how we expand and enrich our lives. People for me are not disappointments. They're
Yeah.
like,
Mhm.
wow, I'm so blessed by knowing so many people. And I'm very humbled by so many people's extraordinary experiences that that dwarf mine and how they've survived and how they've done this and done that. And I'm very blessed in the work I do. I feel very blessed.
I think we're all, I mean, one of the, I'm sure everybody would agree here, just being in practice has been, far and above the most amazing thing is all the relationships that you get to cultivate and have. And I can't imagine, so for me in 27 years of practice, I've just gotten to know and connect with so many people. What an opportunity, what a blessing, it's been and it continues to be. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think,
So we know that there are studies that definitely demonstrate how gratitude makes a difference, having an attitude of gratitude in the immune system things. And several weeks ago, Dr. Matt and I did a thing together. It was right before Labor Day. I think it was the Friday right before Labor Day weekend. And we did a session on that. And just talking about how gratitude itself, it makes a difference in how your body responds. And Dr. Matt was actually talking about that earlier. Like how many things can you actually do? You add in these things, but if you have this grumbly, Dr. Scrooge negative outlook, how effective are they going to actually be? And maybe you can decrease your expenditure on therapies and vitamins and things if you can.
Right. We are a culture, well, we're a society that controls its environment to perpetuate our dysfunction. Like everything that we do to both the external and the internal environment. Like I change the foods I eat, I take these supplements, I do these routines, like I have to change all of my environment to be able to function at a normal level, given my overall dysfunction. It's very interesting that we do it, and we all do it to certain degrees because we've sort of been enculturated into this. maybe you can figure out why that is. It just, there is a certain point that I think that we get to where it's like, so you can experience so much gratitude, you know, and then there's like this interesting line where it's almost as if like without another experience, perspective, perception, belief, whatever, like we're actually not going to be able to experience more. We sort of like have a threshold that we'll meet, and it's sort of like this, like we kind of like get into this little upper limit thing. And so absolutely to that, right? Living longer, I mean, think about that, like what's going to happen in the body. And so what I would encourage you as you start to work with this practice to get curious about what's the limit in terms of how good you can feel. And you'll know that you hit the limit when you all of a sudden have some sort of pattern, such as you're feeling really good and then a stress thought comes in about, oh, I wonder what about this? Or a judgment comes in about, oh, I wonder about that, or like, that's so wrong. As soon as something like that comes in, what you're actually looking at is you're looking at your current capacity to hold the gratitude, the appreciation, the joy, the love, the peace, like, and even to be able to give in a way a purpose beyond oneself. And so get really curious about that line as you start to put this practice into work. And what I can tell you is that each time you come up against it and you can let that go a little bit, you'll actually stretch into a more profound level of gratitude and appreciation. And each one of these bullet points that we're kind of watching go across the screen right here will all have their sort of like governor that's sort of like in there already. And so I just encourage you to get curious about where that line is. And every time you come up against that, you notice that the mind kind of takes you down or moves you in one direction, or something happens outside of yourself, you know, is another way of knowing that you have this sort of like glass ceiling. Get curious about that and know that's going to happen. Accept that, and again, fall back on, you know, okay, what can I appreciate and be grateful for right now, and what's one action I can take toward that?
Yeah, and I was gonna put that in the chat, but I went to copy it. But that is huge. I mean, those things are documented. If you actually go to, let me go back there. I probably didn't just grab that properly, but get in there. Okay. If anyone wants to see that, I
Cool.
think, yeah, it's super important. And the thing that, as Matt was talking, as I was showing that, that I was thinking of was, your worst enemy is your own self-criticism. Okay? Because you don't forgive yourself, you won't forgive anyone. You might forgive everyone, but you don't forgive yourself. And so you can't be, oh, that was a bad business decision. That wasn't a great, I don't know, what did I do? Was that a bad purchase? Was it a this or that? If you're constantly letting that stuff wash over you, instead of being grateful that God is guiding you, that's where I come from. That God is guiding me, and fine. It doesn't mean every decision I make has to be absolutely perfect or whatever. If you go into the day just downing yourself on what you think you didn't do right, or you know how you could have done it better, then you are taking all this baggage into your day. You're taking all this like stuff on your back, and we need to deal with that. You know, in the realm of faith and God and everything, that's done through just, you know, talking with God. But if it's also something you feel like you didn't do right in your life, whether it's your relationship with somebody, or you had an altercation with a child, or you did this, or you didn't plan that right, and that maybe that wasn't the best investment or whatever, you gotta deal with that, and you have to do it with gratitude that you are being watched over, and you also have to do it with self-forgiveness. I think self-forgiveness is key to peace of mind.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be safe to say that when we, you know, when we're opposite of that gratitude attitude, even if it's outward, it's probably reflecting what's going on inward anyway. So we have this vibration, so to speak. You know, there's the term we use, harmonic entrainment, and the vibration that's created with gratitude and what you attract to yourself. You got the internal chemistry that goes on in your body based on that. If your negative thoughts mean chemicals that make you sick, right? And thoughts of gratitude will help you be well. There's just so many levels on which this affects. That's such an
But you know,
effective.
you're talking about overcoming a lifetime of conditioning by a
Right.
society that does it intentionally, right? Everything on television, everything in public school education, everything out there is so contrary to what we're discussing right now, right?
Mhm.
And everything is so anti-science, anti-logic. It's all emotion-based. And wow, I'm just going to say that this conversation really is a open door. It's like we're walking down a hallway with all these beautiful doors that you guys are opening, and I can't go through them all because each one is its own universe. You know, true. I mean, that's true science. That's true learning. That's true life. An
Yeah.
infinite place of discovery, which you know, gratitude opens the door for all of that.
Yeah, I was
So,
just going to say, I would argue that if there was one thing, if you could pick one thing to do of all the things you could do to help your own situation, probably gratitude would probably be the top of the list, right? Because
Yeah.
without it, you get nowhere. With it, you get everywhere.
Mhm. And if that, if it's tough at first to start with like, okay, well, what am I grateful for? And there's a certain energetic like feeling, like a felt sense when we even say the word gratitude, just start with something you appreciate. Try wearing an appreciation once or twice, just like, hey, what's something that happened that I just really appreciate? Like, I really appreciate this cup of coffee, or I appreciate, the kind word that
Yes.
someone said to me, and that I actually accepted, right, Becky? That I actually accepted, and that I was able to like give them, the opportunity to share that toward me, just
Yeah.
what can we appreciate throughout the day? That's a little sort of like small step, because it could be a big gap between like where we are now and actually really feeling grateful. So that's a nice little small hack.
The other thing I
Every
would say
night.
about that, Matt, is that, sorry, Dr. Jean, but the other thing I would say about that is if you don't notice those little things, you are robbing yourself of the richness of life. You are robbing yourself. So stop and notice. I love this song. I love the smell. I love my cup of coffee. I love this. I love the way my room looks right here. I love, please, I mean, this is it. If you just don't notice, take time to notice. You will rob yourself.
We
Every
define
night.
pain. Oh, go ahead, Gene.
I was just say every night when I get into bed, I think to myself, I am so grateful that I have this bed and shelter to
too.
sleep in. Realizing that not everybody has that, like
Me too.
it's such you think you take it for granted, like, oh, I'm gonna go to bed, whatever. But you get into bed, it's like, oh my gosh, I have this like place where I can feel safe and warm, and I can be at peace and ease. I'm so grateful for that.
Me
just
too.
that.
Me too. I feel almost like, I don't want to feel guilty about it, but I almost feel like, wow, how many people, human beings right now in this world don't have just the pure joy of how I feel when I get into my bed and go to sleep. And I want to say to you, Joe, before we sign off, I love that as a pastor, you're so vulnerable and you're so real, because nobody wants to hear, oh, hey, if you get it, then you're just fine. You never have struggles. You never have this. You never have that. That's not the truth. The truth is all of those things will be there. And, God using you, being through the paths of darkness, enlightens you and enables you to help other people. And so that's where we are in this world.
On that, just want to mention, we were talking about community earlier, and Matt knows this, but in one of the methodologies we study, SRI and 12 stages of healing, and the 12 stages is community. And then just bringing in the concept that you just brought up, like it's not all roses when you're going through your process, and even as you kind of ascend higher levels of consciousness. I think of the movie Schindler's List, when he goes through this process, and in the end of the movie, everybody seen that movie? Have you seen the movie?
Can I comment very quickly? I rented it 3 times and I could not get past the first scene. And you're talking to a girl who read The Endless Step in junior high, the Diary of Anne Frank, who saw so many things. I read Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago. I could
Anyway,
not
next time you rent
watch
it, Becky.
Schindler's List. I couldn't watch it. It was so.
Next time you rent it, just go fast forward to the end. Anyway, he's sitting there. It's the end of the war's ending, and he realized, and he did a lot, to help the Jewish people, because he got them working in the factory, kept them out of the concentration camps and whatever. But at the end, he came to this place of enlightenment, because he realized, oh my gosh, I have this watch. I could have sold this watch and saved one more person. I could have got, he got to this place, through community, and then he came back into suffering, like we all experience, but he came back into it from a higher place, from a place of a higher consciousness, through his experience and through, connecting with his community. And then he came back into suffering. So we're all going to cycle through these things. We're going to have times of despair and suffering, but hopefully we can do it from a different place of consciousness. And, I guess, Matt, you'd call it integrate, right?
Yeah, ultimately, and you integrate because it's an upward spiral. It
Right.
doesn't matter what path it is that you're taking up the mountain, but it's an upward spiral, and every time it comes back around, you're going to have more to harvest, and you'll have more to harvest from a different perspective, which is what makes it more and more rich as you keep going. And we describe pain as anything that stands between you and the magic of the moment. So if there's an inability to really engage in that moment with joy, with laughter, with connection, with presence, that is actually a source of pain. And as we move up and up and up on the spiral, we're going to have that continually, but we'll have a broader and broader perspective, and it's much easier to navigate that with a 1,000-foot view than being stuck in the same rut that you've been walking so much that you can't even see over the sides, and so it's a spectrum. The whole thing's a spectrum, and we just have to acknowledge where we're at and know that we're moving toward that, and that it truly is an upward spiral.
Absolutely. So, anyway, I just thought that was an interesting concept to bring back in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cyclical. It's a circle. It's a hoop. It's that sacred hoop, it's like, that's what community is. That's, what everything we're talking about here is, and you create that container to be able to hold that, and that we all do that in our lives. And that's ultimately what we're talking about. You have a practice of gratitude, of like, whatever that sacred time is that you take during the day, it's essential, because ultimately it's going to determine your state, which is going to determine your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions. We're one big radio tower. We're more open and sensitive and able to process and interact than we'll ever know. And it's this great gift that we've been given. And taking that time to really get settled in oneself before we walk out, into the world, which the gravity is fierce out there. Like Joe, you're talking about that. Like, yeah, we're undercutting the reality of that, for the purpose of today. But it's really, you gotta get yourself full first. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's great to do that like in a certain time of day, but it's also even much more like, well, not much more, but it adds on so magically just in the day, when you're like in the day, when you're in the heat of it, when you're like, whatever, oh my goodness, I go, stop, just be thankful, be grateful that you're even in a moment that that maybe you feel like you're behind on or whatever, but you're in that moment. Try to keep that gratitude just as a constant way you think, without focusing on it. Like when I get up, I'm so glad I can get up. I'm so glad I'm healthy. I'm so glad this, I'm so glad I have a place to live, and I have work, and I have all this kind of stuff. But if you can just look at every moment and stop, especially when you find yourself like freaking out about something in your mind, and we all know how that is. If you can pull it into the every moment, that's like.
I totally agree with that. Yeah. And you could ask yourself in each moment, what is the gift in this moment? That could be your mantra. What is the gift in this moment?
Mhm.
And it could be a beautiful moment where you're looking at a beautiful flower or a sunset, or it could be a moment where you're in a challenge, and you can still ask, what is the gift in this moment for me?
I love
and also,
that. And that,
go
go ahead.
I just want to say parting thoughts here. if you think of, you know, Thanksgiving is coming, if you just broke that word down, right? It's thanks. And then what's the other part of it? Giving, right?
Yeah.
From our thanks comes our giving. From our abundance comes our ability to share.
You know, that word too, it's worth mentioning. So Thanksgiving, I mean, from the Haudenosaunee people, you know, who we know as the Iroquois Confederacy, they would translate that word into English as the words before all else. That's how they would translate. That's where ultimately the Thanksgiving comes from, the words before all else. And what a
That's
wonderful
Iroquois. What was the people group?
Yeah, well, Haudenosaunee, but yeah, Iroquois is what you'd see in the main books. Yeah. Yeah, the words before all else. And I love that.
Okay, so I'm writing this into the chat.
Beautiful.
The words before all else.
And they take it pretty serious too. That might be like 45 minutes of Thanksgiving before we even start. It's the real deal. It's beautiful.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, is that it? Are we wrapping
That's
up here? Thank you all so much. Thank you. I'm just, you know, I'm going to leave this meeting here filled with gratitude that I got to spend the last hour with you all, hearing your insights.
Likewise.
And
Yeah.
I'm going to take that with me into next week. And
Me too. Everybody have a wonderful holiday and days in between. And thank you, everybody, for participating. And please, if you have any questions or anything, you know how to reach us. You can reach out to Proactive Health Collective Keene at Facebook, or you can also put things in the chat here, or you can reach out to us at our individual contacts, which I think you probably have.
Yeah, and
All right.
I wasn't on the last call when, I know, Joe, you've been on before, but how do people get in touch with you if they're interested in learning more about the hyperbaric?
Well, I have a website, hyperbaricfitness.com. I'm actually in my tank right now, but
So cool.
hyperbaricfitness.com. And also just I listed drive-by 766 West Swansea Road. And my phone number is, thank you, son-in-law. It's 603-460-5683. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I just put
If
that
you've
in
never
the chat.
experienced hyperbaric, then just go. It's awesome.
All
It
right,
is.
thanks, everybody.
All right.
All right.
Grateful in advance
Good
for a
seeing you.
beautiful
Love to you
holiday for all of
all.
you.
All right.
Take care, everyone.
goodbye.
All right. Bye-bye.